How's it going? It's 8:40 according to my watch. It is 8:40 in the morning here on a Sunday morning in mid-December, Ellensburg, Washington, USA. And if you're here watching in replay and you want to see the beginning of the program, that starts at the top of the hour. That starts 20 minutes from now. But between now and 9 o'clock, I'm going to be saying hi to folks. I'm going to be doing some thank yous, that sort of thing. So thank you for joining us this morning. 20 minutes of preliminary stuff, and then we will be on with the final episode of this series. That's right, we've gotten to Session Z of the Exotic Terrain series, and that's us today, putting it all together. And our most recent episode was a couple days ago, Silesia and the Chugach, and that's available to watch in replay form. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me check a couple things quick and turn that light off and make a couple other adjustments. I don't think we need that much of the wall, do we? So can we say hi to a few folks here and just make sure that we're doing okay functionally? I think I have a better lighting setup today, but one never knows these things. Amanda's in Indianapolis, Phil's in Mankato, Minnesota. Good morning, Mina and Daniel in Mossy Rock, Washington. Dino, Andre is in Germany. Claire is in Liverpool, UK. Powell is in Warsaw, Poland. Norway I saw, sorry didn't catch your name. Seattle, Jenny. Hockey fan. Sweden, hello Marbles Collector. Chuck. Costa Rica, I have a right ear that is plugged this morning for some reason, so I may be shouting a little bit extra. Colin, come on baby, come on baby. Ian is in Melbourne. Ava, age 10, and siblings. Went too fast, but thank you. Good to see you kids this morning. Silver City, New Mexico. Ipswich, UK. Grand Forks, North Dakota. Throwing the pelts on the ice. Oh, yeah. Rick says good morning to Poland. Deborah's in San Jose, California. It looks like we're doing so well that we don't even really need to do the 5x5 thing, so I'm just going to be cocky that way this morning and just go, I think we're going to be... Oh, I didn't want to say that. All right. So I am starting a couple minutes earlier than normal because, of course, I have some thank yous, and I think we should get right to it. Dieter, I got your email from Salzburg, Austria. Great to see you here today. Must be evening for you guys. Andrew Asher in Ellensburg, Washington. Yeah, we got a little snow on the ground this morning. It's delightful. Great to see the snow. And it's snowing lightly up in Plain, Washington, according to Gale. So we got weather reports and everything else. Okay, well, let's get to it. Taro's in Finland. Hello. I can't stop. Smiling Llamas from Orlando. I think you guys were responsible for the citrus. Thank you for that. Blodgett, Oregon. Jennifer says it's about to start snowing in Boise, Idaho. Well, it's appropriate, isn't it? We should be getting snow this time of year at this latitude. Hello, Bonnie. Okay, let's get to it. Nice card, nice things from Gail, who just chimed in. She sent a nice little Starbucks gift card. I've heard of Starbucks, and I'll go in there for the first time. So thank you, Gail. Bernadette in Everett, Washington has a little slideshow for us that we'll be looking at a little bit later. And the slideshow from Bernadette features heart-shaped rocks. So she has 26 photos of heart-shaped rocks for us for each installment of this series. So thank you, Bernadette. I will share briskly. I'll share your little slideshow, and we'll also look at some 26 photos, a best of from Backcountry Gary, and a couple other things in the Cozy Fort. And I brought in the Cozy Fort stuff. I've cheated you all out of the actual Cozy Fort by Steve experience the last couple of sessions because they were running so long. I didn't want to take the time to set up the whole quilt and everything, but we'll do it this morning. What the heck? And when I went out to get the Cozy Fort stuff 45 minutes ago, I found another box. It was delivered on Sunday morning. Can you believe it? So those delivery people are working overtime, obviously. So the box that just arrived outside the mudroom door in the snow is from Georgia. I barely had a chance to look at it. Nice little Christmas card, holiday card from Grayson Summers. We hope you enjoy these fresh Georgia pecans. Our family farm has been growing pecans in Tatnall County in southeast Georgia for decades. And there's a lot more here, Grayson. I don't have time. I haven't even read it yet, but I'll enjoy reading it. So these are some Georgia pecans from the family farm in southeast Georgia. And some chocolate-covered pecans. So thank you, Grayson and family in Collins, Georgia. There was an order to this, but I'm just grabbing things randomly. This is from Dr. Ralph Eagle in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I guess I'll share your card here, Dr. Ralph, if you don't mind, since it's a business card. Very nice letter, nice things. Thank you, Ralph. And Dr. Ralph. And I didn't know you could do this. On Zazzle, is that what you said? Yeah. On Zazzle, a website, you can make things like neckties out of the North Cascades geologic map. So here's the Ingalls ophiolite and the Swauk and the Chewaucum schist invaded by the Mount Stewart Pluton, etc. I suppose I should, huh? I don't have time. Thank you, Dr. Ralph from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Grandpa Carl came up from Granger, Washington yesterday Friday as I was setting up. Nick, please enjoy these Washington State new Cosmic Crisp apples. This is a new brand that's, we've never had the Cosmic Crisp yet, Carl, so we will enjoy these. You've got a whole batch for us here. And this is from Carl and Judy. And Carl also said, make sure you have some of this IPA from Cowiche Creek Brewing in Tieton, Washington. That's just outside of Yakima, Washington. Maria and Derek both come from farming families. Hope you enjoy, and we will. Tiny Dog Session IPA. Thank you, Carl. And Judy. Can I check real quick? Are we doing okay? 5 by 5? I haven't seen one. Again, I'm too cocky. I got to pull back just a second here. Are we? Oh, there's a delay in the comments. Dino says 5 by 5, Sam. We're doing okay. Even in Poland, we're doing okay. Nobody? Good morning. All right, great. Oh, thanks. People are asking for Bijou. He's napping right now, but maybe he'll make an appearance. RJ from Anchorage, Alaska, said essentially, I want to do a field report, but I don't have the skills or the equipment to do a video field report. So he's got 2 full binders full of text and photos from the peninsular terrain snapshot. I talked about the Alexander and Wrangellia terrains as comprising the insular, and they do, but part of that string bean is missing. Most of the remaining part is the peninsular terrain, which spans a large area of south central Alaska. You're right, I've ignored that to this point. We just touched on it very briefly last show. RJ. So I don't have time to share your report. He sent a bunch of beautiful samples from the, is it peninsular? Yeah. Beautiful samples from Alaska. Oh, sure, I'll flip you around. Beautiful plutonic rock from that portion of the insular superterrain. So I've ignored that section of the insular superterrain, RJ, correct? And I've also ignored the Guerrero superterrain, just a little too far from home. And perhaps we'll visit those and add to the story at some point a little later. So thank you for the box. I'll study it very carefully when I have a little more time. And I guess I'll have a little more time starting this afternoon. What is with the ear here? Teresa from Yakima drove up specifically and dropped off this. I'm going to handle it carefully because I think this is extremely special, probably very expensive wine. She's from the wine industry. And she sent a couple emails to give me background. I'll just share that this is a very special bottle of wine from an AVA down in the Walla Walla, Washington area called The Rocks. It's named for its geology. There's a 10-year wait list. I'm not sure what that means. Hopefully there's not a 10-year wait list for this bottle. But this is an AVA founded by Christoph Barron. And Kevin Pogue was involved in setting up the AVA. He's the geologist down. He's a geology professor down at Whitman College, who's an associate of mine. So we will, come on now. I eat meatloaf for breakfast. So we will save this very, very special bottle of wine, Teresa, for Christmas dinner. And we will all take our time to really do our best to appreciate what you've sent us. And I'll take my cues from everybody else at the table about what to taste. So thank you. I hope it's obvious. It'll be obvious to me that it's a very special bottle of wine. So thank you very much. And our final gift to thank this morning is also a very special beverage. From Randy and family in Seattle. There's a little bit of backstory, and I got just enough time to do this. Hello, Professor. By now, you should either have received or will receive a very special package from Switzerland. Inside the package contains bottles of Elmer Citro, a popular mineral water drink that is produced in Elm, Switzerland. Now, if you've been a fan of the show You know that back in October, I was talking about my heritage and all of the Zentners coming from this very small village in Switzerland called Elm, E-L-M. And I showed the trunk of my great-great-grandfather, Nicholas, and we had family mystery, and Matthias in Chur, Switzerland, and Patrick, different Patrick in Zurich, did amazing work to kind of answer some of our questions, and then some others here in the States figured out the exact port and time of the voyage, and it's one of the most amazing things from this whole live stream experiment this in the year 2020. But Randy thought he would, well, let me continue with Randy. After watching your genealogy story, I wanted to send you something meaningful from your ancestral home and give you a literal toast to your health, to the health of your family and your community. While researching what to send you, I found a Zentner connection with this Elmer Citro, of all things. In 1892, the owner of Elmer Citro Beverage Company in Elm, Washington, was a guy named Gilge Zentner, and he had the water chemically examined. This is back in 1892, and found out that it contained a lot of iron. And soon after, he opened up the first spring in Gschwend, built a bathing house, and sold the water bottle in demijohns. This drink is the drink of choice for folks who visit the Swiss mountains and want something refreshing. However, it's not available outside of Switzerland. This is Randy from Seattle talking. So I had to find an export company who would obtain it and ship it to you. So here's this very popular drink in the Swiss Alps, apparently founded by one of a Zentner from Elm, Switzerland, related somehow. I'll have to take the time to figure it out. I don't know, is anybody familiar with this drink? Is it like a local version of Perrier or something? That's French. And by the way, Matthias, who was the guy who put me in who saw the show live with us with the trunk from Nick Zentner and then got me in touch, Matthias went to Elm a couple weekends ago and took a bunch of photos. This is the Zentner house. So this is like, a couple weekends ago. Gemeindepräsident Kasper Zentner. I mean, it's a memorial to the rock slide, etc. I mean, I'm shaking my head because I can't believe it, and I'm getting emotional already, and I don't want this to be a maudlin kind of self-important thing at the end, so we'll get the tears out now. So what did Randy send? Randy, I don't know how you did it. You found this export company to, this is like, what is this, radioactive, like, is this the vaccine or something? What is this? This amazing box, just security checked, for goodness sake. I have no idea how much it cost. Swiss made, direct, shipped to Nick Zentner. It's going through customs. Oh, God. The submitter is Yves Belgian from Swiss Made Trading in Lucerne. Anyway. We will do a toast to you using this, up until now, unknown beverage to me that has a Zentner family history to it. I can't believe it, and I will share all these amazing jewels, family history jewels, with all of my cousins back in Wisconsin and beyond later this month for holiday time. So Randy and family, thank you. I don't know what else to say. I'll just say thank you. And I'll keep this one out so we can use it for our toast. Wow. Okay, give me a couple minutes, would you please? Yeah, it's 9 o'clock. Can you give me 2 minutes, please, just to get my head right? And we will begin our program called Putting It All Together. Thank you for joining us this morning. come in. Black coat.
Yep.
Green purse.
Yep.
I need another minute. Would you mind? Hot mic. Hot mic. You. Bye. I love you. Well, a pleasant good morning to you all. Thank you for joining us here for Session Z called Putting It All Together. This episode of Nick from Home brought to you by Elmer Citro, the refreshing mineralized beverage, water, whatever. You gotta love it, or whatever the Schweizerdeutsch is for you got to love it. Putting it all together. Okay, so we're at the end. It's the end, but it's really the beginning. Let's just say it that way. It's just the beginning. Been doing these live streams since St. Patrick's Day, and I've done more than 100 of them now. I can't believe it. And I've already thanked people regularly throughout, so I'm not going to have a big, list of thank yous at the end. We'll just realize that this will just be to be continued. So there will be some live streams coming in 2021. That is for sure. I don't know exactly when, I don't know exactly how, and that's the beauty of this. This whole live stream thing has been just kind of pure as can be. There's no money going back and forth. There's no contracts. There's no obligation for me to really do anything more. But I hope it's obvious to you that I'm getting probably more out of this than you are. And I know that many of you have been getting things out of it as well. So it's time for a break. But in 2021, there'll be more live streaming for sure. And between now and then, I'll probably be posting other things on the YouTube channel. So I don't think things will be totally quiet and dead on this YouTube channel for the foreseeable future. I hate that phrase. You hear that all the time, for the foreseeable future. So anyway, we know that we're all grateful for each other, and I don't think we'll be heavy-handed at the end of this show. It's a beginning of a continuation. This will be continued, is my point. Okay, so I can kind of put a little dot on a little bow on this exotic terrain series without saying that this is the end and we won't ever revisit any of this stuff ever again. So I got up yesterday morning after our Friday show, and I started thinking, like, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? And I started writing things out, the plan for today. And I'm like, starting to get bored, It's like, okay, this is the passive margin, okay? And then we bring in the intermontane super. I kept stopping and daydreaming, and I think I'm kind of on fumes anyway, but I just, it wasn't working. I wasn't getting excited putting it together, just rehashing all the stuff we've done. So we're going to do some new stuff this morning. A couple of brand new thoughts. we're going to revisit the tomography of Karin Sigloch and Mitch Mahalanik. And so it's not just going to be a rehash. And I do have props, I do have fruitcakes, I do have magnets on a whiteboard. I've got a bunch of things that may or may not work. I guess I slept in, I missed rehearsal. So we'll just see how it goes. But there will be some new content is my point. So we'll be wrapping up the series, we'll be looking back on what we did, but we'll also be doing some new things in various forms of success, I suppose. So let's not screw around, let's get right to it. I think we do need to get into it. He's in the introductory folder. And let's remind ourselves of last session. This will be quick. So we were talking about the last major exotic terrain to arrive in the Pacific Northwest, called Siletzia. And we made a case for the Yellowstone hotspot fueling Siletzia, and then that started to build 56 million years ago out in the Pacific Ocean floor. And then starting 51 million years ago, Siletzia starts accreting. And by 49, most of the action, maybe 48 million years ago, most of the action of accreting Siletzia to the Pacific Northwest was done. And that's essentially where we're stopping this live stream series. The end is Siletzia coming in. Here is Siletzia. It's not a minor piece of real estate. It makes up the basement, the very basement of much of Western Washington and Western Oregon. And then we got pretty loose, if you recall, with Mike Eddy and talking about not just the Yellowstone hotspot, but a spreading ridge that was intersecting the western margin of North America. And so red is this large igneous province, half of it Siletzia, half of it Yakutat, that went up to Alaska, and the Chugach, which kind of got short shrift on Friday and continues because I'm still slightly confused about it, but the Chugach was also part of our story last time. The real messy part of Friday, and I think it worked overall from the feedback that I've received from many of you, is talking about where that spreading ridge was intersecting the western margin of North America at different times. And this is from Mike Eddy's paper. And then we started to wonder, did the resurrection plate, which got in the news this fall with the University of Houston group, did the resurrection plate actually exist? Okay, let's cut to some brand new stuff. Thanks to some help from some people I'll mention in just a second. Since I saw you on Friday, it's looking like the resurrection plate was a thing, but Karin Sigloch and her group called the resurrection plate, when it was a thing out in the water, the Orcus plate. Oh, why not? Let's get to it. Can I find it easily? I put it in the introductory folder. Hang on, Patrick. Oh, I'll do it this way. Hang on. So I'm going to junk everything else in the introductory folder, and I'm going to do this. A visual reminder of what we were doing on Friday with the lights that were just, plastering my face, and I'm like, why am I sweating? It's like, because the lights are 3 inches from your face, you dum-dum. Okay. So the thought was, and the thought continues to be, with Michael Eddy in particular, who is part of this research group that will be working in the North Cascades the next few years. I've mentioned that a number of times. The kind of focal point lately of Michael Eddy and others is that where is this spreading ridge between the Kula and the Farallon plate over the last 80 million years. And the thought was, especially if you're a Baja BC person, that this spreading ridge was subducting beneath Mexico 80 million years ago, and that this spreading ridge, as North America drifts to the southwest, the thought by many is that the spreading ridge is migrating north up the coast. It's migrating north up the coast because North America is moving southwest and you're just looking at this boundary between the edge of the cardboard and the spreading ridge. It looks like a northward migration to that spreading ridge. I'm reviewing Friday and reminding you of what we were trying to do. And then there was another group, maybe just one guy, Michael Eddy, who says, I'm not so sure about that. I specialize, this is Michael Eddy talking now, I specialize in pretty recent geology, and we know that this spreading ridge is intersecting the Pacific Northwest in the neighborhood of 55 million years ago. But Michael says, I wonder if this spreading ridge was up off the coast of British Columbia 60 million years ago, and possibly, and I don't know how to do it with the chalkboard, with the cardboard here, but Michael says, I wonder if this spreading ridge isn't going to the south. Because, again, Michael Eddy says, we've got motion on strike-slip faults that are moving dramatically to the north, younger than 49, and so we need that Kula plate on direct contact with the Pacific Northwest. Okay, that was what we were focused on last time. I guess the main message of this morning that's new, in addition to all the circus acts that will be coming on the kitchen table in just a second, is this. If you approach all of the ocean floor activity during the time I just showed you with Michael Eddy and the thoughts, and John Garver and Darrell Cowan thinking about possibly this spreading ridge intersecting much further to the south and drifting north. If you'd have a different approach and you come from those slabs in the lower mantle, Karen Siglock's group from Oxford in the UK, and I'll do more of this in a sec. Folder 2 has this. Folder 2 is going to take just a very quick reminder of what she was doing with her group, taking slabs that are hanging in the lower mantle and bringing them back to the surface and placing them in the Pacific Ocean Basin at a particular time, in a particular place. And if you do that, you can reconstruct a totally different way, where, Daddy's excited, where these spreading ridges are located, and you see what she's saying. And it was in those papers 2 months ago, but I just ignored it. I wasn't ready mentally to handle it. But I now see that possibly the spreading ridge that we were just talking about, possibly it wasn't the Farallon Kula. That's what we just had, right? And that's the centerpiece of Mike's work. Maybe this thing called the Orcus plate, which I think is just a name given by Karin's group, Karin and Mitch Mahalanek. Maybe it is a spreading ridge, but it's between these two plates, and the Kula possibly never intersected with the edge of North America. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ocean plates, or at least 4 ocean plates at this time, as opposed to our kind of 3 plates. So I'm going to build towards this, but this is the new stuff that I want to focus on a little bit more, as well as the timing of westward versus eastward subduction. Okay, so that was an improv. I never got to this very complicated, busy-looking diagram, but I'm showing it to you now also just as kind of a sloppy seconds from Friday's show. And there's a lot going on, but basically we're bringing in this spreading ridge, we're subducting it between underneath a continent, let's say, and this is kind of a 3-dimensional look at what a slab window or a slab gap. Remember the slab gap? It's called a slab window here, slab gap here, and you might remember those kind of sexy little near trench plutons that were strung out like a string of pearls with an age progression in the Chugach. That's happening if you have strike slip faulting away from a slab gap, and so it's almost like Hawaii, but in a weird, totally different way, that you're going to get a line of gumdrops that have a younging or an olding, to that region. Okay, so he's obviously, third person Sunday, he's obviously going to junk the rest of these, except we know that that's a nice image of showing the kind of old-fashioned, I guess it's old-fashioned to say Kula on one side and Farallon on the other. And I can feel people on the other side of the lens going, old-fashioned? No, that's the whole point of my research, man. Well, I guess it's a question of if you're willing to open your heart to the tomotectonics, the tomography and all that lower mantle stuff, which obviously I'm excited about. And I feel like many folks who are working in the North Cascades, I think including Michael Eddy and Basil Teacoff and John Garver and others, just Karn and Mitch's geophysical stuff, the tomography in the lower mantle, I think it's new enough and they maybe haven't thought about it carefully enough yet to see how it might impact their work. I may be misrepresenting them. So skip it, okay? That's all from Friday. Let's get some new stuff. Okay. So you know that I kind of work off of emails and emails coming in here and there. And got an email right after we quit on Friday from Merle Beck, the godfather, along with Ted Irving of Baja, BC. We've talked about Merle Beck a long while here this fall, and for good reason. He's a major player in this whole exotic terrain story and Baja, BC, and to this point, he's still been kind of we're trying to incorporate Merle's work the best we can. Nick, I just watched your Silesia live stream here, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay, right there, that makes my day, Merle. Thank you. Wow, what a mess of complication has arisen since I abandoned the scene. I will watch your show again tomorrow, that was yesterday, Saturday, and see if it slowly sinks in. You may not know this, but in the 1970s and 80s, the Stanford people and my group did a lot of work on volcanic exposures in what is now called Silesia, and in those days we called it the Oregon-Washington Coast Range. We found magnetic inclinations that were consistently a bit too shallow, suggesting a few hundred kilometers of relative northward transport, as well as ubiquitous clockwise rotations. Maybe that can somehow fit into your story. A summary publication is from 1984, so I'll just show you two. You can freeze frame this. There's the title of the paper, which I don't have, Merle. But he was on this northward movement, not Baja, BC, but northward movement of Silesia a while back. This is an email from a couple days earlier from Merle. Nick, I've been thinking for some time about the more gun-ho Zent nerds needing something to study about how rocks obtain and retain a permanent magnetization that reflects the direction of geomagnetic field. Bob Butler's excellent book covers all that, but at what I feel is at the level that is a bit too advanced for some. I knew that Ted Irving, in his 1964 book, Paleomagnetism and its Application to Geological and Geophysical Problems. So there's the title of this book if you want to try to find it. Ted Irving, 1964. But Merle basically says, I think I lent my copy to Berningshausen, and I tried to find this Ted Irving text from 1964 on the basics of paleomagnetism. And as you might expect, running down such an old specialized book was no easy task, but I finally located one in England. This is Merle, age 87 in Bellingham, Washington. It arrived today, this is December 9th, in good shape, and the name of the previous owner neatly printed inside the front cover. Fred Vine. Now, if you're a student of the history of geologic thought and all the excitement going on with plate tectonics in the 1960s, you've heard of Vine and Matthews. And Merle Beck has Fred Vine's old copy of Ted Irving's Paleomagnetism book, written in British Columbia. It's a small world in many ways. That was a cool email. Thought I'd share it with you. All right, Merle, that's enough of you for now. I think it's time to go to the first act. The first act is using the fruitcake and the rustic sourdough on the kitchen table, demonstrating something at 100 million years ago and 50 million years ago. Those are big dates for us, obviously. second act is going to the whiteboard, which you'll see is really just a white rock tray from a rock cabinet that actually is made out of metal. So I have some magnets, some colored magnets on that thing. And I don't know if that'll work, but we'll try something different with the magnets, colored magnets on whiteboard. And then number 3 will be going back to Karin's tomography in the lower mantle and looking very carefully at the animation that was created this year by one of Karin and Mitch's students, Edward Clinette. That's the plan for today. He junks all the rest of the stuff in the introductory folder. Moving on, baby, moving on. So, I'm about to move you over to the kitchen table. We'll see if we have a shaky thing and we start buffering. I'll hope for the best. But we're going to have a little Goodyear blimp, or at least an oblique overhead view of the fruitcakes that are on the kitchen table. But I want to, before, it may not work, so I want to tell you what I'm going to try to do with the fruitcakes. We'll just play with it, okay? Andy Miner, who is in Cle Elum, Washington, 30 miles away, has been the main inspiration for all of this. And I've told this story before, but 3 years ago, Andy and I were trading emails daily for, seemed like the whole winter break. And he was deeply into the literature and helping me get up to date, up to speed on much of this stuff. I got an email recently from Andy, and I like it. I want to share it to you, and I'll try to demonstrate it on the kitchen table. Nick, the major issue with the North Cascades, which I ramble about in email after email, is that it seems to have suffered from running into not one large igneous province, Bering Archipelago, but 2. First Wrangellia, and then Silesia. The second overprinted and sliced and diced the first orogeny, making it look a bit more complicated than it really is. So I like that concept, and you know that we've been in the North Cascades for a long time. Cue Backcountry Gary. So all the gifts have been amazing. This one is especially prized from Backcountry Gary in Darrington, Washington. And this North Cascades is the centerpiece of all that I'm trying to do here. And you know that I'll be in this country the next few summers with the research group trying to put things together. But Andy's email helped me see something I hadn't seen before, that the trauma, the absolute trauma of 2 major oceanic plateaus accreting, choking the subduction zone, and impacting trauma, creating trauma further inland in North America, has been a major narrative 100 million years ago and 50 million years ago, to make much of the up and down in the elevator and everything else. And so I can say that. I can say that a lot of these plutons are a direct result of the main event 100 million years ago. I can say that some of this other stuff is a direct result of 50 million years ago, but can I show it to you? Well, let's try. Are you ready to experiment? You're coming over to the kitchen table for 2 acts here. Fruitcake Festival, colored magnet, whiteboard, whatever. Okay, I'm moving you. Keep your fingers crossed we're not going to have a major problem with our buffering. I'm taking Larry the ladder and you're coming right over to the table, as close as I can get. And now I'm going to try not to touch the phone. Okay? All right, we're going to try it. I'm right-handed. I got to come around the other side. Yeah, I don't know, man. I thought I was going to have a little bit more of a vertical look here. We'll try. Okay, so we have, what do we have? We have rustic sourdough. And in the last show, we said the rustic sourdough was Silesia coming in. But this rustic sourdough is also going to be Rangelia 50 million years earlier. Remember, they were both oceanic plateaus. The Carmoutzen basalts up by Jerome Lessman's house, for instance. That's large igneous province number 1 coming in and accreting, or North America intersecting it, okay? And number 2, Silesia coming in and impacting the Pacific Northwest. Here's fruitcake number 1 that I still have from Vindman's Bakery. This is the one I tried to restore and I could never figure out how to do it. I still don't know how to do it. This is fruitcake number 2 from Vindman's Bakery in downtown Ellensburg. Vindman's Bakery. You gotta love it. Here's a remnant of the Dareth fruitcake from Texas, including a Pluton from inside. And here's the most recent fruitcake from Georgia that came in as well. Okay. I can't zoom or any. This is probably not going to work. Damn it. Sorry, Patrick. I think I want to. I can't zoom. Son of a gun. All right. Well, I think it works better verbally than it does with the fruitcake, but I'm going to try anyway. You recall that Rangelia, which also is part of that peninsular thing up in central Alaska, so orange, yellow, orange, right? That's the insular superterrane. I'll be more careful with this when we get to car and stuff. I've got some new maps for you. But the main thing I want to do is to bring Rangelia in from the southwest. I want to bring Rangelia, a large igneous province, an oceanic plateau, from the southwest. And I want it to intersect with much of the fruitcake that's already there. So that's intermontane, essentially, correct? It's official, this is not working, but I'm going to do it anyway. Homework I had for you from last session was, why did Baja BC begin 85 million years ago? And my main message, without it actually being clear here, is it a coincidence that the collision with the insular large igneous province, I'll just say Rangelia, is it a coincidence that the impact of Rangelia from the southwest and colliding with Western North America is it a coincidence that shortly after you can see it. Is it a coincidence that shortly after Rangelia comes in, we move Baja BC? Maybe. But there's a tempting correlation between those two major events. So obviously reconstructing ocean plates, which we will do with Karn and Mitch in just a second, is a big part of it. But I think just with this fruitcake and the large igneous province coming in, that's a concept that I haven't hit before, and I'm trying to hit it with you now. One more time, what am I trying to say? 100 million years ago, Rangelia comes in and essentially jumpstarts Baja BC. Probably not along one major Baja BC fault, but a series of smaller individual strike slip faults that are collectively doing this as well. That's trauma enough. But we're going to do it again 50 million years later. Oh, really? Yeah. That's why we talked about the rustic sourdough last time. That was Silesia. So let's have Silesia come in, basically at the time that Baja BC is finishing. I didn't make that message yesterday, last time as clearly as I wanted to. Wrangell was 100 million years ago. Silesia, basically 50 million years ago, is going to collide with Baja BC as it's finishing. And that is a major game player, game changer, game something in the North Cascades. And that's when we have the Straight Creek Fault, which used to be like this, and then starting what? What was the dates of the Straight Creek Fault? What were the dates? Starting 50, remember? Starting 50 million years ago, the Windy Pass thrust connected to the Vetter thrust is broken along with a bunch of these other piercing points, and we have 100 miles of offset in the Straight Creek Fault between 50 and 35. Why did that strike-slip fault on the Straight Creek Fault happen? The second rustic sourdough from Vindman's Bakery comes in. And we're basically taking a portion of Baja BC, slicing it, and offsetting it again. Actually, that's a new thought to me right now as I'm doing this with you. I hadn't thought about that before. What I just did is I took the Baja BC block, including much of the North Cascades, cut it again, and offset the west side again. So to review, I hope I'm not making marks on the kitchen table. If I am, it'll be our little secret. Liz won't watch this one. Not she's watched any of them. To review, 2 major episodes of strike-slip faulting within the North Cascades. Episode 1, 100 million years ago. Wrangell come in, Baja BC triggered. Large Igneous Province number 2, Silesia comes in 50. We slice much of Baja BC off the rest, and we send the western portion of that north as well. All right. I got to clean this up because I'm going to take my beautiful Pendleton blanket and get it in the frame here the best I can. And you're like, why are you doing that? Because now I do want to protect the kitchen table. We're sending Baja BC north again, for goodness sake. Okay, this is another half-baked idea. Let me try to narrate what I have in mind. Anytime I do a prop, it doesn't feel like it's working, so I'll keep it brisk. You're looking at different colors of magnets. And we're kind of breaking these colored magnets using our colors, using the colored pencils by Patrick. We're trying to break these colored pencils, colored magnets into subsets to tell the story of assembling the fruitcake. We're done with the fruitcake, by the way, obviously. To assembling the exotic terrains here in the Pacific Northwest. Class, I'll quiz you here. This is royal blue. This is Dodger blue. What 2 exotic terrains would these be? That's right. I don't have time to wait. This is Quinellia. This is Tachynia. And let's pretend this is Grello. You want to throw in some green? Okay. Quinella, Stickinia, Cache Creek. Now, it's tempting, this is going back now to early October, it's tempting up in British Columbia to bring Stickinia in and then bring in Cache Creek, Grello, and then bring in Stickinia. But you remember that it wasn't 1, 2, 3. There was some sort of arrangement, some sort of way to get these three guys together to bring Intermontane as a unit and accrete it 170 million years ago. This is my attempt to review this fall without just verbally saying all the stuff again. Okay? So, I'm going to try that here. I think you can kind of see it. I think you can kind of see it. Okay. So here's the passive margin over here. There's some little white guys here, okay? So way back in September, we talked about evidence for the passive margin, the quiet shoreline of North America for a long time. And that was a shoreline for a long time, between 750 and 170 million years. If we go back to 750 million years ago, there was a whole other continent here, Australia or Antarctica, correct? But 750 million years ago, I'm reviewing now from some, I guess it was September, maybe October, can't remember. Earlier this fall, we rifted Australia away. We had this passive margin formed. And then we have to wait until 170 million years ago for Quinella, Stickinia, and they're going to color it purple in the movie we're about to watch in a bit, in the Cozy Fort by Steve. So our our Dodger blue is going to be purple. Okay, the Intermontane is going to be purple. Can you do that? But what I want to do here is I want to remind you of the string bean. So the thought was, that the very basement rock of both Quinella and Stickinia, the basement rock, according to work by Mitch Mahalanek and Joanne Nelson and Maurice Colpron, was that the very basement rock of these two exotic terrains making up the Intermontane have a North America affinity. And so we need to rift both of these guys away from the west coast of North America, sometime younger than 750 million years ago, and get it into the Cache Creek Ocean. And then if you recall, let's make a little Grello here, okay? Can you see this? Let's get some green mixed with some yellow. This is Bob Ross now. Let's make a little happy little ocean floor in the Southwest Pacific. So Quinella and Stickinia are originally a North American story. They get out in the Pacific, but this is our first true exotic terrain, correct? Because of the Tethyan fossils. I'm yelling because I can only hear out of one ear. I hope it's not too obnoxious. And in to the middle, so we have two string beans, and I'm bringing Cache Creek on this magic carpet ride coming from Thailand, essentially, coming from the Southwest, coming from Oceania, coming from off the shore of the Philippines, etc. The other side of the Pacific, come to Cache Creek. That's also a large igneous province story, which we underplayed at the time. But if you recall, there was kind of this, and I'm going to try it now. We folded the string bean. Like Light Bright. You remember Light Bright in 1969? I can't turn this thing on to have it all light up. But we made the point that there's the kind of this folding, this orocline of both of these Stickinia and Quinella, and by the time we accrete the Intermontane superterrane, I'd love to come over and zoom you in, but I'm afraid I'm going to screw up the quality of the stream. We have a folded green bean with Cache Creek in the middle. and the whole kit and caboodle, that's French, no it's not, comes in and accretes 170 million years ago to the edge of western North America. I'm going to pause. And the geophysics we're going to be looking at, the tomography from Karn and Mitch we're going to look at just after this clown show, they're not sure if that's eastward or westward subduction. They're assuming it's eastward subduction, but they start their tomography work. They start their animation here. They started at 170. So this story is still a bit of a question mark. We're in the early days of accreting exotic terrain. Okay, what am I going to do here? I need to pick up the pace, I think. There's a bunch of green and black out here. And all I want to show with the green and black is that there's ocean floor. Those mini whiteboards are useless. I like this better. I don't know if you can see it any better. Oh, we'll do this. So the green is going to represent a lot of serpentinite and ophiolites. Do you remember the Ingalls serpentinite, which is part of the Ingalls ophiolite, which is deep ocean crust, probably creating in some sort of spreading zentner? Spreading zentner? This guy must really love himself. Spreading center, 162 million years old. One of the main things of this whole story is that to bring in exotic terrains, you've got to do something with the ocean floor. You've got to somehow get rid of the ocean floor. And if you have any ocean floor rocks left, which are all those green rocks guest Chris Mattinson was talking about in November. If you don't have any green rocks in this story, it's basically ocean floor that did not get out of the way. They got caught. The ophiolites that we do have, like the Ingalls or like the Josephine ophiolite down in southern Oregon, northern California, is a remnant, just a scrap of what once was a huge ocean floor scene. And those various oceanic plates I was showing you, those all have to be crushed. Those all have to be removed, the ocean basins. Are you seeing that, or have you seen that all along? That's why I'm hitting this lower mantle stuff so hard. Because it's not gone. We can find the ocean floor stuff. It didn't just disappear. It didn't get melted and go away. And that was kind of the view up until recently. Now I'm getting a lower backache. Doesn't matter. It's important. So yes, I want to bring in all this ocean crust rock and add it as well. But I'm not going to. Most of this is going to go straight to hell, Patrick. Sorry. Hell meaning the lower mantle. It's going to leave the ocean floor. But where is it leaving the ocean floor? Where is this ocean crust between 170 and 125 million years ago? Where does it leave the surface? Where does it leave us and go down into the lower mantle? The answer is at a fixed ocean trench out here in the Pacific. So let's set it up. No idea if this is working. This is the insular superterrane, which, especially according to Karn and Mitch's tomography evidence, is a fixed trench out in the water. That was a major point from that episode. Instead of a migrating trench and with eastward subduction of this Farallon plate. I've got maps coming in a second in case I'm losing you. Where does all this green stuff get disappeared? Terrible grammar. Where does all this ocean floor leave the ocean floor and go down into the mantle? The answer is this ocean floor between insular and North America that now has accreted intermontane is moving west. And it's subducting beneath a fixed trench just to the east of Wrangellia, the thing up in Alaska, Guerrero. Okay? And so I'm going to have this. Can you imagine all this ocean crust, green rock, then going down a trench with a westward subduction? I'm giving it to you verbally. This, according to Karn and Mitch, is between 170 and 125 million years ago. Here we go. We are, oh boy. We are bringing North America and approaching insular as opposed to insular coming our way. And that's important. Many of you I've noticed in the live comments over the last couple months are like, who cares? What's the difference? You're going to collide these guys anyway. Who cares if this is fixed and North America comes towards it, or if this is fixed and North America comes towards it? The answer is, it is important because we have volcanic arc rocks that need to be on a certain side of a trench. The point is, this ocean floor is moving with continental North America. The plate boundary is here. It's not here between 170 and 125 million years ago. And so, boy, these things are hard to move now. We continue to consume. We continue to destroy. We continue to remove huge acres of ocean floor green rocks, and they're going down the trench. They're going down the slot until 100 million years ago is the old story. 120 million years ago, 125 million years ago, according to Karn and Mitch, we finally closed this ocean. And we accrete, the main event, in other words, we accrete insular with Wrangellia, Guerrero, etc., with the rest of North America. I'm not done because we still have something out here. What's this? Silesia. So, by the way, as soon as this main event, which I keep hitting is 100 million years, and that comes from the rocks, 100 million years is the date for the huge event, the main event, coming from the rocks, the plutons, the folds and faults, all through from Alaska down to Mexico 100 million years ago. There's a disconnect timing-wise. The lower mantle slabs say this all happened 125, so that there's work that needs to be done to tighten up that discrepancy. But you know the last thing I'm going to do. But before I bring Silesia in, what did we just say with this story? We said that shortly after we do this main event, we do Baja, BC. And then here comes Silesia, created offshore. It accretes 50 million years ago. And now we have straight creek fault activity until 35 million years ago. Okay, all right. I am sweating now. I'm moving you backwards. Please let me know if we have a major buffer problem. That's as gentle as I can be, little baby. That's as gentle as I can be, little baby. Woo! I don't know. Was it worth it? I'm not done, damn it. I'm not done. It's 10 minutes to the top of the hour. And, yep, that's what we're going to do. I hope you're doing okay. Are we functional? I just couldn't do the recap verbally. Couldn't do it. If I get bored, then obviously you're going to get bored too. That's the whole point of this whole thing. All right. So, I don't know, I think it was Friday night. I had a nice dinner with Liz, and we went for a walk, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And then I got back, and Liz went to bed, and it was late Friday night, and I'm like, I'm going to watch the replay of that Friday show. And it seemed to go okay, more or less. And then I saw a comment left down below, and I liked the comment so much, I pinned it. Do you know what that means? If you have the YouTube channel and somebody makes a comment you really like, or they make a link to an important paper or something, I've just learned this, you can pin it and then it goes to the top. And so John Thompson, I don't know who you are, but I've learned, I guess, through your second comment that you're an engineer. And I really liked your comment, John. I'm going to read a part of it to everybody. And your comment was the inspiration for me to do what I'm trying to do right now. So John watched Friday's show, and he left a comment after Friday's show. This is John talking now, John Thompson. You can see that pinned comment if you go back to session Y. I went back and rewatched part of the Exotic Terrain session L, the Karin Siglock show, to see if I could draw inferences from those reconstructions as to which of the three stories is right. Remember, I was talking about the resurrection thing, the migrating north with the spreading ridge, or the migration south with the spreading ridge. And John says, looking at her group's plate reconstructions, it shows more plates than just the Kula, Pacific, and Farallon. Her group's reconstruction shows 60 million years ago, Kula is smaller and subducting under the Aleutians in western Alaska. Inboard of Kula, there's a larger Orcus plate subducting eastward under the Insular, and he goes on and on. About the same time, I get an email from Andy Miner, the guy in Cle Elum. Actually, I'm sorry, this is, I guess, Friday morning before I did Friday's show. Nick, although you've got plenty of material for Friday's show, and at least a couple of fine, if not exactly compatible models, notice that Karin Siglock's research group, including Edward Clenette's 2020 movie, put resurrection plate in quotation marks and suggest it was a late stage in the life of an older plate they call Orcus. It doesn't maybe make any difference here, but an interesting idea. Although southerly options of the Faralla-Kula spreading ridge may look funny, they look less funny if there was another plate involved. Note that there's not that there's anything wrong with looking funny. They do seem to help with slab windows further inboard if you're into that sort of thing. Although a steadily subducting ridge can drift, relatively speaking, that was my term, this is part 2 of session Z. Do you notice that I'm not angry? Well, I'm kind of angry, but we're going to try to get rolling here again with, it's a perfect way to finish this series. I'm stalling until we get at least one comment here to see if we're actually functional here, but welcome back. Hello, John. Thank you. John, would you mind, and a couple of you, would you mind going back and helping people find this new stream? So it is. I'll stall here for a few minutes until we get people back. But this is a fitting way to finish all of these 2020 live streams. It's been a huge learning curve for me, almost more technology-wise than geology-wise. And here we are in the last session, and the stream failed again. So I don't know, or we were almost an hour into the first one. So this will be a two-parter. This will be session Z, part 1 will stay, and then we'll just have to use this second stream. That's fine. We'll just have this. I've got another, I don't know, who knows? I got another 20 minutes at least. So we can't end where we were. So we're up to 225 people, and I know that many of you are good good-hearted people, and you'll go back and tell them that we are here, and we will assume that we can make this work. So if you're catching this one and you didn't see part 1, please go back and find Putting It All Together, Session Z, Part 1, which is almost an hour long. And this is a continuation. And I'm going to wait another 5 minutes or so until we can get everybody back. Can you tell me how many did we have over there before the stream failed? So I can get a sense of if we can proceed, if we have most everybody there. My question is, there's a little bit of delay here. Did anybody notice how many people we had in the first part of the show? Over 1,000, Judy? Oh, wow, we had more than 1,000, no kidding. Thank you, Patrick. Wow, okay, so I'm gonna wait then, I guess, a few minutes until we have, I don't know, what number should I pick? Wait until we can get over 800? I guess if there are 1,000 people truly in live, real time with us, then we'll try to get as many. I see we're over 400 now. So yeah, a couple of you are helping back at the other stream, and I'm sure I'm still streaming at the old whatever. I'll never figure that out, but I promise I won't get grouchy. It's the last show. I can't be grouchy. I just have to roll with it. And if there needs to be a part 3, hell, if there needs to be part 17, because there's 17 failures of the stream, that's what we'll do. I want to finish this out. This will give me a second to get myself reorganized. So we're almost up to 500. I'll wait another few minutes, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of holding on, and you can, if nothing else, just let me know when we get over 800, if we can get most of the people over to this new stream. All right, we're getting there. Let me do one thing with you while we're waiting for everybody to find us. You remember the whole reason for doing this exotic terrain series is to teach myself this material so that I can understand what the research team is doing. Mike Eddy, Stacia Gordon, and Bob Miller. I was going to share this with you at the end, but let's do it now, just for something to do while we're waiting for everybody to get rolling here. I want to remind you and read to you the plan for the next few summers with the Mike Eddy research team in the North Cascades. And it makes more sense to me, and possibly to you too, since we've made our way through most of the alphabet here. Nick, looking forward to this coming summer of 2021. This is Mike Eddy writing by email. We will largely be focused on the late Cretaceous through the Eocene. So even though you and I have been doing our homework on stuff happening up to the mid-Cretaceous in the main event, and intermontane and insular and other things, and the main event 100 million years ago, Mike says we're going to start with the group that I'm part of. We're going to start in the late Cretaceous and go into the Eocene. So I'm guessing that's roughly like 80 million years ago until what, 30 million years ago possibly, something like that. Major plutons included in the suite are late Cretaceous plutons, Ineot pluton, Cardinal Peak pluton, and Oval Peak pluton. And younger than that, plutons in the Eocene, younger than 50 million years ago, the Golden Horn pluton, the Cooper Mountain, the Railroad Creek, and the Duncan Hill plutons. We will be thinking about the timing of emplacement of these plutons, along with exhumation of the Skagit Gneiss complex, and motion on some of the major faults in the area, but we will be east of the Straight Creek Fault throughout this entire study. So the Skagit Gneiss and Ross Lake Fault Zone are likely key areas for this aspect of the study. Stacia Gordon will very likely be spearheading work in the Skagit Gneiss. That's the one that went down the geologic elevator and came back up and had all the sediment being shoveled into it. And focusing on its exhumation history. Bob Miller will likely be focused on the Ross Lake Fault Zone's movement history. We didn't talk a lot about the Ross Lake, but it's a major strike-slip fault. And I, Mike Eddy, will be sampling the plutons to generate high-resolution record of magmatism through these periods. Now, maybe I'll be a thorn in their side, and I keep saying, what about Karn and Mitch, and what about... Because I don't know how much they'll be tuned into that work or if they'll value that work, but I value that work, and that's what I'm trying to do here. We have 720 now. I think I'm going to proceed. Yeah, thank you. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm half expecting these crashes. My God, I do the whole testing thing and like the test before you start to show the upload rate and the download rate, and the numbers are just crazy good. And I'm inside. The freaking modem's right over there. Out of my control. Okay. So we have 730 people, and I hope a few more trickle in. I'm sorry, that means we have more than 300 people who I guess will only be able to watch this on replay. They can't find us, or maybe they've had enough. I don't know, but I got to proceed, and I'm sorry that we had that break, but I don't know why I'm apologizing. So I do want to revisit, thanks to John's email and Andy Miner's email, and they're tipping me off that stuff down in the lower mantle, which used to be crust up in the ocean floor, this is a new way to reconstruct where those spreading centers used to be, and therefore, perhaps the significant, perhaps a brand new way for us to reconstruct those spreading centers out in the water, which is a huge part of the story. So just to get us back into it, yes, there's now this wonderful, not only imagery, but data that shows the Juan de Fuca plate subducting and continuing all the way down, and that is the old Farallon plate, a much different story than what we've been focused on. Just trying to remind you of what we did back in the Karin Siglock show. But these slab walls that are hanging there way, way down below North America, the biggest slab wall underneath the east coast of North America, it cannot be the Farallon plate. And up until Karin's work, starting 10 years ago, everybody assumed that this slab wall in the lower mantle was the old Farallon plate that subducted eastward. She says this has to be the old ocean floor between intermontane and insular that subducted westward into a fixed subduction zone. Now, you've heard the words a number of times, but I have a new way to show you what I mean by that. And I had to write it out and draw it out for myself to make it work. Part 2, Session Z, actually. Earth poop. Okay, Rick. All right. Remember, I like walls of frozen yogurt falling vertically underneath a trench and then piling up. I mentioned Basil Tekoff from the University of Wisconsin, who's been a major help with much of what I've been doing the last 5 years by email and Zoom last week. And Basil said, he said, you're not going to believe this, but when I first read Karin Siglock's poop piles in the lower mantle, sorry, Patrick, thank you, Rick, colorful poop piles, frozen yogurt piles, Basil said, I was sitting there in the Los Angeles airport, LAX, and one of the murals in LAX was this. Basil says, I'm not making this up. I'm like reading this paper with these kinds of diagrams. I look up and I see this mural in the airport in Los Angeles. Like, what are the odds? Like, it's meant to be. Or now I'm adding. That's kind of a fun little thing. So if I'm losing you, we're almost 800 now, good. If I'm losing you, there's kind of this is from I showed you a month and a half ago, The old idea of a massive Farallon plate coming at North America and subducting beneath North America, and then this idea of where is this spreading ridge between Kula and Farallon. I hate to say it this way, but I think I am. Is even Michael Eddy and a few others thinking about this with the old ideas? Meaning not using this tomography. If you use the tomography, the Kula is not a major player. It is the Orcus, which is also moving northward. So there's another northward moving magic carpet ride. And this is what I try to want to explore with you with a couple of custom Sharpie marking pens that I've put together last night before I hit the sack. Okay? So not to go back, you'll have to go back to the Karn Siglok show to see all the background on this, but they used the lower mantle to find these beautiful fixed trenches out in the water before the insular superterrane gets accreted. Let's just say it that way. And yes, they're hovering up above the East Coast and looking obliquely down through North America to this major slab wall underneath the East Coast of North America, and then the Cascade Route slab as well. And so you have these two guys, this thing that's not connected to anything, this guy, which is the subducted Farallon more recently. The main thing I wanted to do for you is to get the timing of this, which I didn't have when I did this a month and a half ago. So I went through this and I watched that Clinette movie, which we will do in the Cozy Fort, God willing, in a few minutes. And we will see how they're taking these discoveries in the lower mantle and helping us understand what we have up here on the surface. Skipping ahead. Fixed Rangelia. Subduction, and you've got this stuff piled up immediately underneath. I didn't hit that hard enough last time. These frozen yogurt piles are immediately underneath the fixed ocean trench. And that's what these guys are saying. You don't have to guess where the spreading ridges are anymore. You don't have to guess where the ocean trenches were. We've got the stuff that came into the subduction zone and all that ocean crust we were destroying on the kitchen table, and here it is. And it hasn't moved since that time. So if you move these continents back to where they were at a particular time frame and restore everything, you can find those old ocean trenches. So I showed you these, and it's too much. It was too much for me 170 million years ago. So they're showing the trenches basically, they're showing the 3D imagery, they're showing these plates that they have created, 170. 140, and you're like, slow down. Well, I'm not going to slow down because this wasn't working for me. It was too much. I couldn't do it. But you know what I can sometimes do effectively, not always, but sometimes I can simplify and still stay true to what I think the major messages are, and I can maybe get it across. We're 850 now. Good. I'm glad most of you are found us again. I remember doing this with you in the Karn Siglok show, and I had about the same kind of detail as I do right now. Well, here's what I have that really helped me last night and possibly will help you too. And I feel like, if nothing else, it tells you where we are, at least from one major research group from University of Oxford in England, ironically, dealing with what stuff happening in the Eastern Pacific, where we are right now in 2020. And will this change in the future? Of course it will. This continues, it's a mystery novel. We continue to try to, follow all the clues and finally get to the point where who killed the whatever and the whatever. Okay, so it's me now with my Sharpie marking pens. This is the old idea that I've taught forever. This is the actual piece of paper, but I added some things from a month and a half ago. Westward moving North America. Therefore, a trench And the black triangles, remember, show the direction that the trench is slanting into the ground. So this is eastward subduction. Fixed spreading ridge out in the water. This is the old idea that really nobody believes anymore. Nobody believes anymore. And all you need to do is move North America closer and closer and closer and closer to this fixed East Pacific rise. And as you do that, the position of this trench drifts with the leading edge of North America. You have eastward subduction the entire way. This is the last 200 million years of time. And as you do that, you accrete these two huge super potatoes onto your windshield. Oh yeah, there's the surfboard with the Cache Creek down the middle. This is Quinellia and Stikenia, and they all come in and they get added 170 million years ago. Ka-chunk onto the windshield. Continue the old idea. And here's the insular superterrain with Wrangellia and Alexander, which was some Northern European immigrants, etc. That thing's going to be accreted 100 million years ago. And then you finally cross much of the East Pacific rise. Now that's ignoring the spreading center that is being subducted, correct? That's not talking about the Kula Plate at all, correct? That's not talking about Baja, BC at all, correct? This is as simple as you get, and yet from the late 1960s until, I don't know, college classrooms like my college classroom until last year, I was teaching this. Well, I've changed my teaching because I'm finally up to speed on what's going on. And I will continue to change my teaching as we continue to learn more and more. So what do the new ideas look like that not everybody totally agrees with? This is the way for me to synthesize what Karen Siglock's group is now seeing. Between remember, they start 170, so we've already accreted intermontane. They don't have the resolution in the lower mantle to know much about the details there. So they're starting their story, and in the Cozy Fort, they'll start the movie 170 million years ago. And we're going to look at that thing backwards and forwards a few times. But there's Quinellia, Cache Creek, Stikenia. They have accreted already, probably eastward subduction, but let's not get hung up on it. Yeah, we're moving North America, but we're not just moving North America. Notice that the plate boundary is here. Notice that we have westward subduction here, right off the coast of insular. Therefore, this is fixed. And insular is fixed. Now, this is a big old hot dog, but wasn't this a big oceanic plateau? Yes. I don't totally get why it's drawn like a kielbasa. That's confusing because these are not I don't get why it's a big hot dog. But regardless, we have our insular looking like this in Karen's movies. But the key concept is this ocean floor, with all that ocean green rock, is moving with North America. This whole thing is moving. There is no trench here. We're not drifting the trench like we were with the old idea. The new idea says, are these the same orientation? Yes. Old idea, new idea. The new idea says, drift everything, ocean crust and continent, and have westward subduction into a fixed ocean trench. That works much better with the position of that slab wall, which today is underneath the east coast of North America because all North America has drifted over this entire ocean trench. Now, interestingly, there's also another trench that they have in their animations that's on the opposite side of insular. So we do have eastward and westward subduction at the same time. Does that mean the frozen yogurt is a combination of consuming this ocean floor and this ocean floor? I'm not sure. Now there's an interesting twist that during this time of this general picture going on between 170 and 152, we're going to take the insula. This is brand new from Clinette's paper 2020. By the way, it's a master's thesis. And as I understand it, his whole product from his master's thesis is a movie, is an animation. They needed a movie. So this kid made an animation for his master's thesis. And again, we'll look at it in the Cozy Fort. But one of the brand new things from his movie is that we're going to split insula. We're going to break it in half. Break the hot dog in half, bro. 162 million years ago. While all this is going on, westward subduction, eastward subduction, consuming ocean floor, their model to explain what? An ophiolite with an east-west trending spreading ridge. What is this? This scientific paper with an animation from Oxford, England, talking about the Northeast Pacific, talking about major tectonic plates, is highlighting the serpentinite that's 30 miles to the north of this living room. The Ingalls ophiolite and the Josephine ophiolite, same thing. So that is satisfying to me to have something that's always bothered me just right over there that's part of this brand new work. And it's fun to basically find a neighbor, an actual neighbor in Kittitas County that's part of this grand story. So I think that's a temporary thing. You'll see it in the movie. And then, I don't know, it comes back together or whatever. I don't know. But we want to finish our story, don't we? This is the latest and very intoxicating set of ideas from this tomography work. So we're to 152. We still have westward subduction. No, 125. I read that backwards. 125. So do we keep going with westward subduction? Do they have westward subduction for their whole model? They do not. They flip back to eastward subduction, and they have eastward subduction of ocean plate material from 152 basically till present day-ish. And so this is after the main event. Again, I mentioned this to you before, but I'll mention it to you again right now. They do not have the main event at 100 million years ago. They have it 25 million years earlier. I don't know how to reconcile those two things. But by now we have accreted, insular, and even green, which is the Chugach from last show. All assembled now. The fruitcake is mostly assembled with an ocean plate. And then 70 million years ago, according to their animation, we stopped the subduction for a time, the eastward subduction, and we have things set up with a spreading ridge to the south, and it's their Orcus plate that is the magic carpet ride to the north. So I think it's time to go in the Cozy Fort. Hang on just a second. This is probably your only time to visit with Bijou today, and he wants to say thank you for watching, and it's been really fun to have you all here at the house for all these live shows. If you go way back to the first test that I did in mid-March, where I turned on the phone for the first time and saw that I could live stream, Bijou was in that one, sitting on the wall in the backyard. So he's been part of the show the whole time, haven't you? And it's so wonderful. Oh, good, we have more than 900 people here. So we got most everybody back, and that's a wonderful thing. So, did you want to say anything to these guys? Did you want to say anything to these guys? Give me just a second before we go on the Cozy Fort, see if I have anything left. Got a nice email from Gene Keever. Got some more nice emails with kind of reflections of how far we've come since they were learning geology in the 1950s, the 1960s, and early 1970s. And thank you for that. I was going to share some of that, but I don't think I will. I do want to share this, though. This whole business of having an archipelago offshore and having westward subduction is not a new idea. And I've meant to do more with Eldridge Moores from UC Davis, University of California, Davis. And he tells famously a story about sitting in a conference with Bill Dickinson and just having all these light bulbs go off in the late 1960s about how to deal with ophiolites and have the ophiolites tell a major story about tectonic plates in the American West. And so I'm just sharing these papers with you because Eldridge should be recognized here as being way ahead of his time if this current train of thought of archipelago off the coast of North America as opposed to a simple Farallon plate. These papers are telling this story, and their diagrams are very similar to what we have now with the tomography, but he's got diagrams that I should show you. He's got diagrams that are exactly like this 20, 30, 40 years ago. Eldridge Moores. I've mentioned him before, but I was going to do a full show on him, but I just kind of ran out of letters. But if you're wanting to see somebody who was on top of his game for most of his career, thinking creatively and thinking against the grain, and it's starting to look like he may have been on to the story long before many of us, he should be recognized. And speaking of that, Bob Hildebrand, who I mentioned a little bit with the slab failure model, do you recall? And I shared some of these papers from Robert Hildebrand. Bob got wind that we were doing these shows. I don't know if he's watched any of them, but he got wind of it. And he said, I got a brand new paper that's about to come out. It's not in press yet. But it's focused specifically on the Peninsula Ranges. You know, each of his papers are more than 100 pages long and chock full of all of these very sexy diagrams. So Bob emailed me his newest work, and I'll be looking forward to it. But I noticed in his, I guess in his conclusions, he said this. Eldridge, this is for you. So Hildebrand, Siglock, a number of other folks have been taking the ideas of Eldridge Moores from 50 years ago and working with them. Okay, that's enough. Let's go to the Cozy Fort. And 930. Okay, so I guess we're all experienced with this now about failures. And as I get ready for more live streams in the future, again, no promises. For all I know, I'll be bored out of my mind in January. We'll be back at it. Or maybe I'll be very into something else and we won't do live streams till next summer or whatever. I don't know. And I guess I don't have to promise, do I? Except I want to keep this going in a certain way for this community. My point is, I want to continue prepping for the North Cascades work. So I almost certainly will do another live stream at some point, probably in 2021, on the Eocene, on what's going on in the Pacific Northwest in the last 50 million years. That's almost a for sure. But I need to think hard about what I want to do, when I want to do it, and I think I need to explore more about this technology. Because if there's a, hang on. This Cozy Fort by Steve really works, man. I forgot how dark it gets in here. Hey, I can't keep doing these things and have the stream fail, 2 out of 3 times. So I need to learn more. I need to learn more about options that I have here and maybe buy some new equipment or I don't know what. But we need to fix that. Give me a second, would you? I got to find our second stream here. What do I do? Go to Nick Zentner's. Oh. How do I find this thing? How did you find this thing? Where do I go? Oh, here. Part due. Oh, that's clever. Okay, 925 are watching. Okay, I've got us now. We have no sound that we need in the Cozy Fort. Okay, so Eric and Jay down in Sacramento came up with this yesterday and sent it like a big old Zorro Z. So thanks, fellas. That's kind of fun. This is the Zend. And Bernadette from Everett, Washington, is fond of heart-shaped rocks and thought that she would share her collection of heart-shaped rocks, 26 photos for our 26 exotic terrain shows. That's Bernadette's shoe, I believe. Not in Washington. Heart-shaped box, yeah, Nirvana, nice, okay. So Bernadette, thank you for putting these together. I know you had some other heartfelt comments, but I'm a little skittish about that. If I do too much of that, it sounds like I'm just in love with myself, and we don't need that. So I'm just sharing your nice collection of slides here, and I think I'm just gonna stop with that. Hope you can understand that. So if nothing else, you can kind of enjoy Bernadette's photos and also remember each of the sessions we've had this fall. I appreciate you taking the time to put this together, Bernadette. Still have that bleached look. There's that shoe again. Mount Stewart at Ingalls Lake with the serpentinite of the Ingalls ophiolite in the foreground. And this is us today with a broken stream. Perfect. Includes Bijou. Thank you, Bernadette. And thank you to Patrick, who sent this last night. Patrick, age 7, who's been with us since the start. And that's Patrick, age 7, and Nick, age 58, standing on Cache Creek. Thank you, Patrick. I love you. We're going to get to the movie from Karin's group, but this is a little slideshow that I put together. I just grabbed 26 of Backcountry Gary's photos that I liked, and I put it on a little timed slideshow thing. And I'll just let this play, and we can enjoy with a nice dark room a major contribution to our series by Backcountry Gary. You've seen all these before. There's Gary. Thank you, Gary. I think without these photos from Gary, which he labeled carefully for us each time, without these photos, oh God, I love that shot. Without these photos, I don't think the majesty of the North Cascades is recognized. Like, we're not talking about some godforsaken place where we're doing this geology. And so there's an advantage of thinking about all this fun stuff academically, keeps you alive mentally, but then it also keeps you alive physically if you're trying to do all this work in a place like this. Powell in Poland says this looks terrifying. I have the opposite reaction. I wish I was up there right now, Powell. And those of us that have some background and some experience in the high mountains know that it's a very special place. So it's all about comfort. Much of this is about comfort. Comfort intellectually and comfort physically, but places like this become old friends to you if you have some confidence and experience in these places. This is all the North Cascades, which is, of course, just a portion of the terrain that we're talking about, no pun intended, this fall. So thank you very much to Gary from Darrington, Washington, yet again. And we finished, no, do we? So I have two animations to show you. This from Ivana, who has this as an unlisted portion of his YouTube channel. I think he prefers it to stay unlisted. That's totally fine. But this is from Karin Siglock's research group 6 years ago. And I like it most because it shows our fixed insular. I'll try to, I don't think I can. That's insular, fixed trench. And here comes, we got dates. Here comes the main event, which they also have at 100, oh, that's the same, right. 125 is where they like that main event. Again, this is 6 years old from a Henderson master's project, maybe PhD project, not sure. And this is not the most current movie that they have. But it obviously shows Baja, BC happening, but it's almost like an afterthought compared to all the rest of the stuff going on. Let me show that to you again. We're not looking at ocean plates now. We're not looking at subducting spreading ridges. They're taking their lower mantle ocean slabs, their slab walls, and they are reconstructing positions in the Pacific. I keep forgetting to show you the timing here. So will we all look back on this in 20 years and laugh? Probably. You know how this works. Each time that you're currently thinking about things, you assume that you've solved it. But you know that that's not the message here, and it should never be the message with science. It should never be the message of science. And that's something I fight all the time. I've got people on the street who are saying, well, you guys just said such and such, and now you got a different answer, and so obviously you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, well, we have a different story because we have new information that's come in. That's the exciting part of science, but I've said that a number of times. This is the last thing we'll look at in the Cozy Fort, and then I guess we'll do some live Q&A. Why not? Edward Clenette. I think you can find this online. If you can't, we've had, is it Eldrith or Idrith has been really good about posting links in the comments below on some of these YouTube sessions. And so This is a downloaded MOV file that I've used, and I've got this on a loop. So I'm going to play this. I'm going to let this run for, I don't know, a few cycles, basically. We're going to have it go forward, and then it's going to kind of herky-jerk go back in time, and then it's going to go forward again, just with one button here. So I'll try to keep my mouth shut the first time through. And now we'll go backwards. I don't know why it doesn't play smoothly backwards, but whatever. And let me try to narrate just a little bit. This is Edward Clinette, master's student. I think he's now getting a PhD at Austin, Texas. And I thought about emailing him last night, but I thought it was doubtful that he'd have time to reply to me right away. But I'd like to connect with him. And I'm reminding you now, maybe I can point out just a couple of things. Obviously, this is insular. That's intermontane. They collide, and notice that it's kind of a closing of the north before they close the south. But I don't know how many times I played this and replayed it last night as I was making my little cartoons, trying to figure out when do they have the westward subduction? When do they shut it off? When do they go eastward subduction? And again, that is the Orcus plate. I'll wait for a third time, and the final time, I guess, to put that together for you. But there's lots going on here, and you could play this back and forth if you haven't already multiple times to really they've got a lot packed into this, including the Ingalls Ophiolite. I've avoided, have you noticed, the Franciscan complex in California? They've got a very creative way to get some of the Franciscan and parts of the Great Valley into this story. I don't think I'll point it out because I don't still totally get it in my head. But I think the last thing I want to show is that look at the different ocean plates that they have based on the stuff they have in the lower mantle. They don't have a major Farallon, but they also don't just simply have a Kula and a Farallon in the Pacific. They've got the Orcus. This is the Orcus that now is viewed as the resurrection that they have found in the subsurface. Orcus, I'm keeping my finger on the Orcus plate. And they're going to swing at the beginning of Baja, BC. They're going to get the Orcus. There we go. The Orcus is the magic carpet ride for Baja, BC, not the Kula, according to Karin Siglock's group in Oxford. And Ivana and a couple others have pointed out they don't really have Siletzia on this thing. I don't know if that's an oversight or what the story is there, but I think that's the Yakutat. Oh, it's going backwards now. So that's what I wanted to show you. 10:45, of course it's a long one. Let's do some live question and answer and wrap things up. Woo! Let's see if Bijou's around as well. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, John Stockton, who's been watching this show. Thank you, Jim Mattis, former defense secretary, who's been watching the show. You know, I mentioned that I went out, that I met Jim Mattis earlier in September. It was more than that. I went on a little field trip, he and his family. And I mentioned that because I was with both of Jim's brothers and other family members, wives, etc. And we were talking about the popularity of this show. And I was like, I can't believe how many people are watching, especially people who are like, have never been here and now probably never will be in North America. And it was one of Jim Mattis's brothers that said something that I hadn't thought about before. Maybe you agree. He said, I think what is working is that people are in awe and they kind of have a sense of wonder of all these things that happened so long ago. And maybe also a little bit of awe at how people today can learn anything about things that happened that long ago. But just that theme, I've forgotten your name, I'm sorry, Mr. Mattis, That theme that people maybe for centuries always had a sense of awe and wonder and grandeur and some sort of religious life they had, and maybe that's not part of their life as much anymore. And so this is almost another way to tap into something much bigger and broader and grander. I hadn't really thought about that at all, but I thought it was an interesting comment. Thought I'd share it with you and name drop things as well, obviously. So uppercase with a couple of final questions, and then we can talk about the future before we quit. The device 9, does the major trauma of accreting big igneous provinces help explain the very rapid rise of deep mantle rock into the surface? Excellent question, as they all are. We definitely have this upper mantle material getting to the surface. And I think it's most traditionally viewed as a ocean basin spreading center story. And so is that really tied to creating a large igneous province? I'm not so sure those go together in my mind. But what does go together in my mind is this incredible down the geologic elevator, getting metamorphic equivalents, and then getting the stuff back up. That seems to be more the trauma that comes to mind. Oh, we got somebody screwing around with the gifts. So that, to me, is a tie, and there's probably some mantle involved in that. But it's an excellent question that I don't think I have a great answer for, so I should stop talking. Lars, is the Yellowstone hotspot potentially just a subducted spreading ridge? Thank you. These are all interesting. I don't have all the papers handy. I think it's still difficult to pinpoint where the Yellowstone hotspot was out in the Pacific, if it was out in the Pacific, if it does have that long-lasting history. And it's tempting, isn't it, to put the Yellowstone hotspot right at that spreading ridge between the Kula and the Farallon, or the new idea between the Farallon and the Orcas plate? Or if you want to get real greedy, how about you put the Yellowstone hotspot at the triple junction where you have 3 ocean plates in contact with each other? Is that a thing? Well, you can go back and say, I don't think we have, look at the ocean triple junctions we have today. We don't have any hotspots at those. So it's an interesting idea. Probably challenging to put that together. Gary, another Gary. Olympia Gary. Could the frozen yogurt piles be responsible for Cenozoic uplift in the southern Appalachians? The deep slab beneath the east coast of North America is way down there, deeper than 100 kilometers depth. As I view it, Gary, that's got nothing to do with what's going on recently on the East Coast. And of course, the uplift of the Appalachians. Is there Cenozoic uplift in the southern Appalachians? I guess you're telling me something that I don't know about. If there's active uplift right now in the southern Appalachians, what's going on there? I can't imagine there's a connection to that stuff in the lower mantle, but I guess it's possible. A few more. Chuck, does the interplay of the North American plate and the spreading account for the clockwise rotation? Generally, yes, Chuck, but I think more specifically we view, why not? The old standbys we've used all spring as well. Here's the poster that Patrick gave me of today's situation and the subduction of the Juan de Fuca plate coming away from the spreading ridge. This is real. This is not an idea now. We know all of this. And this is Cynthia Shaw in Tri-Cities, Washington, who made this with a major assist from Steve Riddell in the Tri-Cities. I think they undersold Silesia, by the way. We have looked at images from Ray Wells that Silesia is a majority of this. This is a subducted oceanic plateau, not just a little ribbon. But I'm nitpicking now. This is what we know today. But this really does work with so many different groups. This clockwise rotation that was first documented by Merle Beck and Tanya Atwater and has been embellished upon by Ray Wells and others. What is driving this thing? Most view that it's the combination of the present plate vectors of the Juan de Fuca plate and the Pacific plate that are grabbing hold of these two subblocks and rotating around the Euler pole at Spokane and Pendleton and other places. Each block having its own Euler pole. Thank you, Glenn. But this is not the ocean plate configuration going back tens of millions of years. We've already made that point. So why was there rotation with different ocean plates nearby? Maybe that's what you're getting at here. I don't think I gave you an answer, but I tried to run with it a little bit. Scott, could the subduction of the spreading ridge be the explanation of, oh, same question. Thank you. What are my thoughts about craters of the moon? Mark, would slab failure result in the geologic elevator? So Mark likes Hildebrand's idea of slab failure, which I haven't really folded into this much. But would the timing of a slab failure related to closing of an ocean basin be directly tied to this geologic up and down in the elevator? I think that's probably what the Mike Eddy group is going to be continuing to work on. The timing, well, they already have some significant timing, but plugging it into a bigger story would be an exciting part of this. One more, and then I've got a couple thoughts to wrap things up. HHC Wasa. Could it be possible the spreading ridge creating a new island arc to be accreted to our Pacific coastline in the future? That's Hugh in Puyallup. Thank you, Hugh. That's how we'll finish. Well, we have bathymetric maps. We know that the Pacific plate dominates today, and the Pacific plate is heading to the northeast. And that's our time on the planet, right? We're given the Pacific Ocean basin, and it's a time when we have a monster ocean plate, the Pacific plate, that's heading towards the northwest, Japan, the Aleutians. And so future terrain accretion will be out there. But that said, the Pacific plate's going northwest, but who's coming in from the right frame here and drifting to the north? Who's coming in from the northeast and drifting to the southwest? Us, the North American plate. And so are we done with accretion? Generally, the answer is yes. Could the spreading ridge create a new island arc to be accreted to our... See, I would change that slightly, Hugh. Our spreading ridges are not creating island arcs. Our spreading ridges are creating these basaltic ridges, piles of basalt, and we keep spreading that material away. The island arcs are definitely a subduction story. So I think that's how I'll answer the question. It does not look currently, or even in the immediate future, that we will have a new subduction zone getting established offshore somewhere. Therefore, I don't foresee, I don't foresee a new island arc being created offshore and then us slamming into it to have a repeat of what we've had in the past. But it's a really interesting thing to think about, and my spitballing doesn't mean that that's particularly accurate. A toast to you. This is a shout out to my grandpa Clyde. Clyde John Zoya. This is one of his drinking glasses. So that's my mom's side of the family. There's a whole other, maybe in the next live stream we'll do some genealogy with the Zoya side of the family, and going back to the stonecutters in northern Italy. But for now, we're going to... Ooh, you hear that? We're going to take this delectable mineral water from my dad's side of the family and pour it into this personal drinking glass of my other grandpa. And a remembrance of Mount Stewart, the Mount Stewart Pluton that is the most local and interesting part of the exotic terrain fruitcake that we've been studying this fall. Here's to your health. Gesundheit. Oh, there's a little lemon in there. I can see why this is popular up in Elm, Switzerland. Here's to the health of your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents. That's silly, but we want to think about all of the people that came before us. Here's to them. And here's to our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren and all the people who will come after our short time of the planet is done. Here's to everyone in your community, near and far, to their health. I want to thank you for joining us today, for joining us on Friday, for joining us the weekend before, for joining us back in September, for joining us in late June, for joining us in the first live stream back on St. Patrick's Day in mid-March. 2012, 2020, 2021, those are all years that will be written about, but it's 2020 that will be in the history books as an unusual year. And I will read about 2020 as well, God willing, and look back on 2020. And my first thought will not be the major storylines. My first thought will be you and what we were doing here with this exciting live stream series. Now I'm going to let this run for a couple more minutes. I'm going to go to try to find Bijou so he can say goodbye. But I'm going to also let this run just a few minutes because I would like to see your comments about what you'd like to see in the future. If you haven't already written, what would you like to see, whether it's a live stream series, whether it's recorded videos from the field, whether it's live sessions from the field, whether it's the most young 50 million years of time here in the Pacific Northwest, or you'd like to go in a different direction. You know that a benefit of this community is me learning so much from you, not only about technology, but learning about what would work with future projects. And so I'm very interested in what you might have to say about what you might want to see from this YouTube channel in 2021 and beyond. So I'm going to let this run. I'm going to go try to find Bijou. And thank you for all of your gifts in many forms this year. Mr. Bijou. say goodbye. Say goodbye to these guys. I think we're both going to nap here. It's Sunday. And I will enjoy looking at your comments, and Bijou will enjoy reading your comments as well. So on behalf of Bijou the Cat and all the geologists who've contributed both near and far to this series, thank you, I love you, and goodbye. It's not the end, it's just the beginning. And we're going to reach for the X together. In fact, Bijou's going to reach for the X. Ready? Ready? We're going to reach for the X. Going to reach for the X. Oh, reach for the X. I'll help you. I'll help you. Attaboy.